good morning, folks. I am a firm believer of equal rights for all, not equality of outcome. Oh, he nearly came off his bike. Wow, that was close. Just giving everyone an equal opportunity of a fair shot. That's me. I'm a fair man. I like to be fair to everybody. So I'm going to be fair this morning. So if you are a charity worker or an aid worker, specifically for the Ukraine refugee effort, I'm going to give the white refugees the same equal opportunity as been given to the non-white refugees from Syria and Africa, wherever. The same treatment that the non-white refugees has been getting in mainstream media and the general public, the same energy that the non-white refugees has been receiving in recent years. I'm going to give that same equal energy to the white refugees of Ukraine, right? So it's only fair. It's only fair. You know, what's good for one is good for the other. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. So therefore, dear charity worker or aid worker for the white refugees of Ukraine, I simply don't give a fuck about you, your refugees. In the same way that the general public and mainstream media didn't give a fuck about the non-white refugees from Syria and Africa. Right? It's only fair. It's only fair, right? So please do not approach me for any funds. I will tell you to fuck off, and you won't expect to see no blue and yellow. Oh, Nelly said red. Blue and yellow flag here. This is a blue and yellow free zone. I sure the fuck ain't gonna put that on my Facebook. So, like I said, equal rights for all. So the equal don't give a shit, don't give a fuck is the same equal don't give a fuck I'm giving to your white refugees. I'm not a racist, but I do believe in equality. And so there you have it. Equality from me to you, aid worker, charity worker, for the white refugees. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
So apparently, nearly 100,000 people in the UK have now signed up to take in a Ukrainian refugee. And apparently the idea is you have to have them in your home for a minimum of 6 months, but these refugees or immigrants, or however you like to refer to this situation, are allowed to work and stuff in the UK. So the benefits of the £350 go to the person taking them in. It's not to sustain the refugee. 100,000 from a country who historically hate immigration. I ask you, how many of them 100,000 people that signed up for this scheme would do it if the refugees were coming from Syria, Iraq, Somalia, anywhere where there are brown people? Think about it. And think about our government, especially the Tory party, historically well against immigration. Why are they suddenly doing a full U-turn and opening our borders to the Ukrainians? There is a bigger agenda here. And if you're not waking up to that and asking fucking questions, you are an idiot at this point. The fact of the matter is, the media and the government are trying to train your brain. They are trying to condition you and socialise you into viewing our black brothers and sisters as lesser beings. They are trying to make them below you. The fact that they're turning around on their immigration stance to let predominantly white Ukrainians into the country, but would never have done this for any other race that are fleeing from war, tells me everything I need to know. And the fact that the people in the UK and probably other countries can't see that fucking worries me. That goes to show how programmed people are. This country is racist. At this point, I'll stand by what I said in my previous video, which has had like over 3,000 shares at this point, because that many people resonated with what I said. If you have turned around on your stance about immigration and opening our borders, you're a fucking racist. You're only doing it because Ukrainians are predominantly white people. You didn't give a shit when it was Afghan people or people from Palestine or Syria and all these other countries that are still in war, still fleeing, sending their children to die in boats, drowning because we won't let them in. If we've managed to do this U-turn for white people, we need to do this U-turn for people of colour too. Write to your government, write to your MPs, make a video, speak up about it. We need to do something about this because this is fucking systemic racism at work.
No doubt about it, we're living in times of catastrophic crisis where the lives of innocent civilians are sacrificed in the wars of their masters. Yes, in Ukraine, but not only. Since the last plenary, tens of thousands of Afghani citizens have been forced to flee in search of food and safety. 5 million children face famine, an agonising and painful death. A 500% increase in child marriages and children being sold just so they can survive, and not a mention of it. Not here, not anywhere. No wall-to-wall TV coverage, no emergency humanitarian response, no special plenaries, not even a mention in this plenary. No Afghani delegations and no statements. My God, they must be wondering what makes their humanitarian crisis so unimportant. Is it the colour of their skin? Is it that they're not white, they're not European, that their problems come from a US gun or a US invasion? Is it that the decision to rob their country's wealth was taken by a despotic US president rather than a Russian one? Because my God, all wars are evil and all victims deserve support, and until we get on that page, we have no credibility whatsoever.
There's a new report released that found that dozens of non-white Ukrainian residents who fled the conflict are now being held in long-term detention facilities in Poland and Estonia. Yeah, and some of them are being held 3 weeks or more. Here's a picture of what those detention camps are looking like. They're not pretty at all. And that photo comes to us courtesy of a joint investigation conducted by Lighthouse Reports, Independent UK, and other journalism outlets. And the experiences in these camps, they're being documented and they are harrowing. What we know is that one of the students said that they were stopped by officials as they crossed the border and were given no choice but to sign a document they did not understand before they were then taken to the camp. They did not know how long they'd be held there. There's a 29-year-old black man from Nigeria who was studying in Ukraine before fleeing, and he said this. He says his phone was confiscated by Polish border guards, and he was given no option but to sign a form he did not understand. It was written in Polish. I didn't know what I was signing. I said I wouldn't sign, but they insisted I sign it, and that if not, I would go to jail for 5 months. The student said he was then taken to court where there was no interpreter to translate what was being said so that he could understand, and then taken to a detention center in a small village in what I believe is Lesnalio. Now, there's another student as well who described their ordeal right now, and they described that to an activist. He had said, my mental health, I'm just scared. We escaped Ukraine. It was very, very horrible experience. And you know, it's the most biggest risk of my life. Now we are under detention. At the beginning, I thought I was being kidnapped. This really shakes me to the core, thinking these individuals who are fleeing conflict and a war that they had nothing to do with at all. And as a result of the color of their skin, they are not being treated like everyone else. In fact, they are being put in these detention camps, feeling like they're being kidnapped, not getting the information that they need, and also not having access to the outside world. Apparently, it's been said that they could submit or they could send emails to communicate, but that's not even consistent. This is very, very upsetting. And also, we know that this is going on despite an EU protection directive that was issued on March 4th. And it stated that any kind of third country national studying or working, living in Ukraine should be admitted to the EU temporarily on humanitarian grounds. And this directive also is supposed to help refugees fleeing the invasion to stay in whatever country they end up in for at least a year and to have access to education as well as to work while they're there. And also, as the Independent UK notes, This EU directive states that it also applies to nationals of third countries other than Ukraine residing legally in Ukraine who are unable to return in safe and durable conditions to their country or region of origin. And so what is the reasoning? What is the excuse? Well, I can tell you that in a letter to a member of the EU Parliament in mid-March, Polish border police, this is a letter here, confirmed that they're holding at least 52 third country nationals. You may not be able to read this letter because it's, in Polish, but hey, I could tell you basically what it says. The letter stated that this detention was necessary to carry out administrative proceedings for granting international protection or issuing a decision on obliging a foreigner to return. A spokesperson for the Polish border force said it couldn't give any detail about the procedures on foreigners because of the protection on personal data, adding that it is the court which takes the decision each time to place people in guarded centers for foreigners. And there are a number of African embassies out there in Poland who are also wondering why their nationals are being detained given this directive, and they're trying to work on their release. This sounds completely fishy, given that it seems that the only people being held here are Black and brown. So, Ravana, how does this sit with you?
Yeah, I mean, first, the fact that they're saying that the courts are making these decisions, but now we know that the courts aren't even having interpreters for these, third-party nationals. That's not justice by any stretch of the imagination. And this is disgusting and racist and horrific, but it's not surprising given Poland's treatment of particularly Middle Eastern refugees. I mean, this is a country that was constructing a 16-foot tall border wall on their border with Belarus to try to keep out, predominantly Middle Eastern refugees. This is a country that allowed Kurdish refugees to freeze to death outside its border while they were waiting to get in. Their track record is not great. And I think, a lot of us who are American, we talk about the disgusting nature of our immigration system, but it's not uniquely disgusting. I mean, Europe has a massive immigration problem, and it's not of immigrants coming into the countries. It's the treatment of immigrants, the treatment of refugees, the treatment of asylum seekers. And this is not to say that I think by any stretch of the imagination that the white Ukrainians should be treated worse. I think that all refugees should be treated the same, or, in fact, better than they're being treated, because, even the Ukrainian refugees are not having the easiest time. It's just a gross situation, especially thinking that these people are escaping what is probably the scariest situation they've ever been in their lives, just to be detained because of the color of their skin.
Yeah, it just really shows us that anti-Blackness, it's something that's universal. It doesn't matter. It crosses borders. It crosses languages. This thought that you are less deserving of humanity and equal fare, just basic treatment as a human being simply because you have a higher melanin count than others. And also we see using this whole documentation thing, saying that they lack proper documentation and that's why we're holding them. Really? So you're going to tell me that the white Ukrainians had all their documentation and it just so happened that the people of color were the ones who did not have any documentation? Get out of here with that. I couldn't even want to believe that, especially if the individual is just a resident of Ukraine. I'm sure they carry their documentation, their passports on them regularly. And so this thought that it's only a certain segment of the population coming from Ukraine who should be in this detention camp because they lack proper documentation just tells us that there will forever be pretexts when it comes to mistreatment of Black and brown people in this world.